In our long read piece on Michael Beale, we focus on one of his quotes, which is, if you're better organised, you'll run less. And he goes on to say that you'll exert less energy, which you can kind of save for attacking scenarios. And I think that models everything that Rangers do. When you look at this compact 4-3-3 block mid block that we're so accustomed to seeing, and backline's actually probably a little bit higher than that, Rangers press and limit the space of the opposition can play in, while also allowing themselves to attack how they want to. And Beale speaks about that: defend with a view of how you want to attack. So what we know we see is the ball will come out, the midfielder will come across. In his coaching presentation that we did a detailed piece on, what Beale spoke about in this scenario is that these two players over here, when the ball is here and Rangers have naturally overloaded to cover the space, these two players aren't playing, in his words, because for them to get the ball, it would either have to go round in front Rangers or over, which would allow them some time to shuttle over and mirror the same on the other side of the pitch. And Beale talks a lot about that, how he wants to defend, how he wants to attack, and that allows Rangers to play a game of cat and mouse, in his words, but we'll speak about that in a second. So he always speaks about how he wants teams to have to play in front and around of Rangers, and he explains protecting the central areas is important, because obviously it's where your goal is. But he also explains that he wants to make the pitch as small as possible. So you'll see when Rangers have the ball, they try to make the pitch obviously as big as possible. And this is quite like a fundamental footballing philosophy about expanding the space and limiting the space when in and out of possession. Gerrard spoke a lot at the weekend. He certainly emphasised heavily in his Rangers TV interview about how happy he was with the speed of these players in here. So you'll see when the ball goes from side to side, Rangers turn hips side to side in a really military-esque fashion, whether the ball was going out to the right or the left. And what Gerrard was really happy with was the speed with which they did this, because if the shape isn't leaves gaps or is slow in getting across the pitch, then it could be easy to play around. If the switch was quick, or if the opposition team was able to find gaps centrally and switch it over. But what Gerrard was really happy was the speed over the grass and the aggression. I think that's going to be really important going into the Champions League. The shape, even though it's been so successful for Rangers, it keeps being adapted and it keeps being tweaked so that it's fit for any opposition. Now, the last thing we want to talk about is what Beale calls a game of cat and mouse. So this is him explaining why Rangers defend like this, because in his mind everything is conditioned by how you want to attack. So there's no point, therefore, in his wide midfielders going back all the way here, because they're not in the game to affect the game from there. They're in the game to affect from here. That's why it's important that we have a team that complements our attacking and defensive strengths. So what he means by a game of cat and mouse is, if the ball goes in here, say Glenn Kamara comes across and Ryan Kent is shuttling here, instead of, say, Yanis Hadji or Kemar Roofe and Alfredo Morelos going deep, by staying here, they give the defence a decision. Now, as we know, when Rangers are overloading and blocking this central ball over to the other side of the pitch, these players, in Beale's words, aren't actually playing the game. They can't influence it unless the switch comes or there's space opened up. But the space shouldn't open up because of the central areas that Rangers are blocking. So what Rangers can therefore do is make the defenders make a decision effectively every time. Are they going to gamble and go forward, or are they going to leave space here to attack? And I think especially this season with Wright and Sakala and Kent, the front three that we've seen against Real Madrid, that's going to be a really interesting dynamic. How can we limit the opposition's intention to go forward by our own threat going forward, because of the ways we can block the central areas of the pitch, be quick across the grass to block the opposition on the other side of the pitch if they get over there, but ultimately keep our players in advantageous and, as Beale calls them, interesting areas, so we can defend ultimately as we want to attack.